So hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to Fiction Quest. So we are back with a brand new video. Now we move on. What if Naruto was the Emperor of the Four Water and in love with Lilith? But before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. Damn those pirates to hell. Why did they have to ruin everything? All because they found Roger's treasure. Cursed Dr. Vegapunk as he and his pacifistas moved through his laboratory, desperately gathering his research material from advanced medical studies, to communication and transport, to the pacifista technology along with prototype weapon designs. Dr. Vegapunk could hear the revolutionaries and marines above him as the sound of explosions drew nearer. Knowing he would have to gather all his research to prevent the revolutionaries from acquiring any of his plans, otherwise the marines would be even harder pressed to try and regain order across the world. Damn it. Why did they have to find One Piece now of all times? Why now when I had just finished the prototype? Dr. Vegapunk seethed as he remembered when word reached every corner of the world that a second crew had reached Raftel and had conquered the Grand Line. Marines, pirates and civilians all over the world were in shock when not only had the mythical treasure been found but also the true history of the Void Century, the true history surrounding the formation of the world government and the marines that serve them. The horrid truth quickly turned the populace against the marines and many of the kingdoms split from the world government. With the government split, the marines soon received conflicting orders from different countries on where they were to be stationed and which countries to defend. The pirates took advantage of the confusion and attacked all over the world. The fallout was far greater than from the end of the war at the summit 3 years ago. Whitebeard had been right in his prediction of war engulfing the world in one day. The sounds of warfare grew louder as Marineford continued to shake as if Blackbeard had returned to sink the island. Thinking of the traitorous pirate captain, Vegapunk couldn't help but scowl at how the three great powers had collapsed with the finding of One Piece. The pirates of the Shichibukai quickly turned on the government, with Boahan returning to Amazon Lily to protect her homeland. Though with how pressed the marines were all over the world, there was likely to be little to no danger to Amazon Lily, and Vegapunk thought that she merely left simply to ride out the turmoil in safety and comfort while letting the pathetic men fight and die due to their greed and arrogance. Doflamingo proved to be crazy in the end, having going to the Gorosei to say that he quit as with the world at war it would be far more fun to be on his own, fighting all who got in his way. After telling them this, he gave them his resignation from the Shichibukai in the form of the decapitation of 3 of them and then pitting the remaining 2 against each other. With that little puppet show over, he went straight to the New World to fight any and all at what he viewed as the central place of neutrality in the world. 2 of the new members of the Shichibukai decided to do the same and were currently in a battle royal with Kato, while Trafalgar Law along with Eustace Kid fighting against Big Ma'am in the New World. Vegapunk had no idea how that battle was progressing as communication with the rest of the New World had been cut when the revolutionaries attacked. Vegapunk cursed as he remembered his deal with Kuma and the secondary programming regarding the restoration of his memories if One Piece was ever found within 5 years of his final conversion. Vegapunk only agreed to it because he wanted to do something for Kuma for all the help he gave him over the years. Besides, if none of the Yonko had found it in the last 22 years, then what were the chances of someone reaching Raftel in the next 5? Apparently high as with Kuma's memories restored, he quickly revealed that he worked for the Revolutionary Dragon and had taken all documentation regarding Marine base locations, enlistment rosters, battle tactics and division breakdowns along with all current pacifista blueprints and manufacturing details. In short, Kuma gave Dragon everything he would need to counteract and defeat the Marines and world government in the Grand Line. And that was exactly what Dagon did. The revolutionaries had attacked all marine and government facilities all over the Grand Line. The only place holding against the assault was Marineford, but from the sounds of the battle above, it would more than likely fall within the hour. The only silver lining was that Kuma did not get in plans of the upgraded pacifistas or anything on the prototype. As the pacifista around the lab under Vegapunk's control continued gathering his research, Vegapunk wondered what had happened to the final warlord, as he seemed to merely disappear after the discovery of One Piece was made. Many a swordsman were searching for him to try and claim his title as the greatest swordsman, but he could not be found. Vegapunk concluded that Mihawk was merely waiting for the dust to settle, as war never seemed to interest him, but Vegapunk couldn't quite accept that, and that the world's greatest swordsman was up to something much greater than simply hiding. The pacifista were gathering as quickly as they could, but PX-12 stated that the battle was drawing near the lab and that the conflict was only 2 miles away. Dr. Vegapunk cursed the Admiralty for the situation. Fleet Admiral Sakazuki decided that in the calamity of the world with war sweeping over all the seas, the Marines would first stabilize the Blues and then the Grand Line. The idea seemed good on paper, but the reality was a far worse story. The revolutionaries had already established dominance in the 4 Blues, and all Marines of captain rank or higher had been mobilized from HQ to the Blues to, ironically enough, liberate the countries from their liberators. As such, the Marines were spread across the world, with the Admiralty currently fighting the leaders of the revolutionaries in Goa Kingdom of all places, while the Grand Line was left in total anarchy to the pirates and the revolutionaries found there. Weapons research and materials stored and ready for transport. Storage of project codename, Tree, commencing. Stated PX-23. Vegapunk sighed his first breath of relief. Soon he would be able to leave and would be able to save his research from both pirates and revolutionaries, especially the Tree, the second to last of his greatest breakthroughs before One Piece was found. Only he and Kuzan knew of it, though he only informed the Admiral as to what the project was years ago, not that he had been actually able to construct a prototype. Vegapunk knew he would never be able to complete it to what he had originally hoped for, but he could never allow it to fall into the hands of the revolutionaries nor the pirates, as it would truly destroy any hope of the Marines winning this world war. He had to ensure that only Kuzan had it, or he would have to destroy it, though that was the last resort Vegapunk would use, as it had taken decades of research and dozens of research samples to complete the tree to this stage. Vegapunk wondered how Kuzan was doing in the war. He alone within the world government knew where Kuzan went, and he hoped that if he could reach him with his research, then they could unite the divided Marines under Kuzan's banner and hopefully restore peace and order to the world. All of this mayhem and death could have been avoided. All of this destruction could have been prevented if it wasn't for that one pirate crew. That one pirate crew that defied all. Their actions defied all reason. Their progress from when they began defied all logic. They defied the 3 great powers and accomplished what all thought was impossible. In such a short amount of time they passed through all obstacles in their way and made it to Raftel and found One Piece. They had also brought war to the entire world. Damn you, Straw Hat! Cursed Vegapunk! The pirate who would be king had indeed become it. And with his new title found himself in a battle with the only man who could challenge him for the title. The Blackbeard pirates were currently fighting the Straw Hat pirates for the title of Pirate King, while Shanks and the Red Hair pirates were fighting alongside the Straw Hat to help even the odds against Teach and his crew of stolen devil fruit users. That battle started 3 days ago, and there was no indication of a winner yet. Although this entire mess of a war had begun only 3 weeks ago. Vegapunk had to take a moment to reflect on that. Decades, no, centuries spent by the world government to try and establish order, torn down by a 20-year-old kid in 3 weeks. No matter what you thought of the situation, it was impressive. Storage of project codename, Tree, completed. All storage of research available within Laboratory 1 completed. All material ready for transport. Stated PX-23. At last. Time to leave this war zone, said Vegapunk as he called all the pacifistas that were in the lab. Gather the research and transport it to the Marine warship docked in Port 42. Battle has escalated. Blockade in effect by revolutionary forces. Port 42 destroyed, reported PX-12. Vegapunk's face paled in the realization that without that ship and with the blockade, he and his research were trapped on the island. The 12 pacifistas under his command could potentially clear a path to another ship, but there was no hope them protecting his research. He knew that when the revolutionaries spotted them, they would focus all their effort on getting him and or his research notes. The only thing saving it right now was that the revolutionary forces did not know the location of the lab's entrance, or they would surely have been knocking the door down by now. Vegapunk knew his only chance at escape now was through his last breakthrough, but could not help but laugh at the irony. It was one of ancient weapons of the Lost Kingdom. Vegapunk discovered that the function of the stone archway was that it was a doorway. To where? Vegapunk had discovered that the doorway could open to anywhere and everywhere. However, it was a one-way trip. Vegapunk suspected that it was originally designed to transport troops and supplies across the world, but he later realized that the doorway would close and there would be no way to open it from the opposite side. Vegapunk deduced that this device was made as a last-ditch effort by the Lost Kingdom to escape the wrath of the 22 kings. He wondered if anyone from that kingdom had used the doorway, and if so, where had they fled to? Suddenly the laboratory's entrance shook as the sound of cannon fire rang against the other side. Vegapunk knew it was either surrender to the revolutionaries or take his chances with the doorway. Steeling his resolve, Vegapunk activated the symbols on the archway, and what he saw amazed him. Within the archway a valley appeared with a waterfall, and two impressive statues of men wearing some sort of combat armor faced each other, with one hand raised up to their eye level in an unusual hand sign and the other grasping the hilt of a sword at their waist, had appeared. Vegapunk noticed that the valley between the statues was unnatural, as if it was carved into the landscape by a pastifista laser, only on a much larger scale. Vegapunk considered trying a different combination of symbols, as he had no intention of facing whatever carved that valley. "We're breaking through. Keep firing!" yelled one revolutionary as the door started to buckle under the bombardment. Vegapunk knew that his fate behind that door was definitely not in his favor, so with that, he ordered the 12 pastifistas to carry his research through the portal, along with the tree, as he took his notes on the doorway and stepped through to this new world. When the revolutionaries broke through, all they found was an empty laboratory, with a strange stone archway at the far wall. They assumed that this lab had been abandoned and closed down days before they arrived. It would be some time before the archway was activated again. Dr. Vegapunk fell into the dirt after tumbling through the air. He did not take into account that the doorway would drop him into this world from the sky, but luckily the fall was only 3 meters. After picking himself off the ground, he saw that the pastifistas had all safely landed with his research. Looking around, he saw that the doorway had brought them to the side of the valley with the statue with spiked, long hair. Seeing that there was no immediate threat, he turned to the pastifistas. "What is your status and that of the research material?" "All pastifista present. No damage to report. All research material accounted for. Project codename, Tree, undamaged. Portal from project, doorway, closed. No sign of pursuit. Reported PX-12. Dr. Vegapunk sighed in relief. He and his research were safe, and there was no sign of the revolutionaries following. He knew that without his notes on the ancient device, no one would be able to figure out how to use it unless they were able to read the ancient language, and the only person he knew who could was currently fighting with her crew in the New World. Even if her crew prevailed, it would be months, perhaps years, before they even find the doorway. That was only if they even found his lab and knew what they were looking for, and he was the only one who knew of the doorway's existence. Vegapunk felt a sudden chill running down his spine, as that wasn't true, as he had not discovered the doorway. One of the Shichibukai had and gave it to Vegapunk to research, and he was currently missing. Vegapunk didn't know if Mihawk knew the function of the doorway, but couldn't help but be concerned that the swordsman knew more than he was letting on. Suddenly the ground shook as if a cannonball had been fired into the ground. What caused the tremor? Vegapunk asked in a panicked voice. Had he been found already? He knew nothing of this world and didn't even know what the inhabitants were like. To be discovered now without any clue as to what this world was like would be disastrous for him. Tremor caused from impact at base of ravine. 2 unknowns currently engaged in combat at base of valley. Reported PX-15. Vegapunk peered over the edge of the valley to see the combatants, to find out what the locals looked like. If they were busy fighting each other, then they would not have noticed his arrival. Thanked Kami for tunnel vision. When Vegapunk saw the 2 combatants, he was greatly surprised and intrigued. Valley of the End, base of valley. Naruto was exhausted. He, along with Shikamaru, Kiba, Neji and Choji, had been sent to retrieve Sasuke from Orochimaru's forces and return him to the Leaf. He had no idea how the others were faring in their fights, but he knew that his battle with Sasuke had become desperate. Sasuke refused to listen to reason and gave into the full power of his cursed seal in order to prove that he was far superior to Naruto. Sasuke had continually attacked Naruto savagely, attempting to kill him in order to awaken his Mangekyo Sharingan. In response to a fatal wound caused by Chidori, Naruto had to unleash more of the Kyuubi's power in order to survive the assault, and he was currently surrounded in the Kyuubi power with the chakra forming a single tail. He had just launched a powerful strike at Sasuke, sending him head first into the base of the far statue. Naruto pleaded with Kami that it was enough to end this, as he could no longer move his left arm. The Kyuubi's chakra was damaging him more than it was protecting at this point from extended use, and it was starting to affect his mind. His prayers were unanswered as two large, wing-shaped hands came out of the crater, followed by a fully transformed Sasuke. Kukakuku. You are special. But now I am more special than you. Taunted a smirking Sasuke. Noticing Naruto's stance with a limp arm, he chuckled again. I see that power of yours is not without risk. This is a fitting place. The Valley of the End. Spoke Sasuke before smirking. It is finally ending. This battle. Sasuke started flashing through hand signs as blackened lightning started forming in his left hand. Naruto knew he had but one chance as he started forming the Rasengan in his right hand, fueled by the Kyuubi's chakra. Chidori. Rasengan. Their attacks clashed against one another as they fought for dominance as both chakras, cursed and foul, started to form a darkened sphere around both shinobi. Within the sphere, both combatants stared at the other directly in the eye, one with hatred, the other pity and remorse. Sasuke in a final effort threw all his strength into a punch directly where he had earlier pierced Naruto's chest, while Naruto struck Sasuke across his headband, scratching a diagonal line through the symbol of the leaf. When the chakra had subsided, the victor was clear. Sasuke stood over an unconscious Naruto, staring at his fallen form. Pain griped his body as his transformation reverted back and brought him to his knees, face to face with Naruto. As he looked at Naruto, Sasuke decided to spare him. He would not follow Itachi. He would gain power on his own path, and if that path led to darkness, then so be it. As he picked himself up, he looked up to the roof of the valley only to see 12 giant men, all identical in appearance, surrounding an old man in a large metal casket, all of them staring directly at him. Valley of the End, Ta no Kuni border. Vegapunk had watched the two fighters with great interest. How had they been able to stand, let alone fight on water? What was that red mist surrounding the orange one, and how had the other transformed? What were these strange attacks they were using? So absorbed in watching the two, Vegapunk had forgotten that he couldn't be found just yet and had let his natural curiosity get the better of him. He only realized his mistake when the fighter that had transformed into a demonic angel had looked up and spotted him and the pacifistas. Cursing his curiosity, Vegapunk had noted the shocked look on the boy's face upon seeing pacifistas and realized that it was not likely a response to them being spectators, but more at the pacifistas' physical appearance. He knew that he and the pacifistas were going to stick out no matter where the doorway would send them, but judging from the boy's shock, he had likely never seen 12 identical, 15-foot-tall cyborgs before. Not that Vegapunk could blame him, as his world had not seen anything like that until the war at the summit 3 years ago. Proximity sensors detect incoming unknown approaching from the south at high velocity. ETA 105 seconds. PX-20 declared as he stood guarding the casket containing the tree. Upon hearing this, the boy in blue started running up the valley wall, moving as fast as his injured body could go. Knowing that whoever was coming had been drawn to the area by the battle, and Vegapunk knew that whoever it was approaching would more than likely call for some sort of backup. Quickly thinking of the best course action would be to create a diversion so he and the pacifistas could escape, Vegapunk gave the order that would change everything. PX-13, incapacitate closest unknown without fatality. PX-13 raised his right hand at the boy and fired his laser through the left side of the boy's chest, just above his heart. Sasuke's eyes widened in disbelief for a moment before falling to the base of the valley. With that done, Vegapunk ordered the pacifistas into the forest and start heading to the east. Valley of the End, High no Kuni border. Kakashi leapt through the trees as fast as he could possibly move. He had already passed Shikamaru, and from his report on which way the Sound Ninja and Naruto had taken off on, he knew that Sasuke and Naruto would be at the Valley of the End. His faithful summon Pakken had told him that both scents were in the area, but a new one smelling of metal and oil had appeared. Kakashi had asked where this scent was coming from, but all Pakken could tell was that it was coming from the far side of the valley. Kakashi would ignore that for now, as he had to ensure that his students were all right and that they hadn't killed each other yet. Just as Kakashi emerged from the forest, the heavens had opened and rain lashed down upon the scarred valley. Kakashi had but a brief moment of relief as he saw both his students were in the valley, but it soon died as neither of them were moving. He moved quickly to Naruto, as he was the closer of the two, and examined him. He suffered several burns and had signs of chakra exhaustion, but what concerned Kakashi was the large amount of the Kyuubi chakra staining the valley, so much so it was hard to sense anything else within the immediate area. Seeing that Naruto would be fine as long as he was treated by a medic, Kakashi then moved to his other student only to see his greatest fear. Sasuke was face down on the ground with a hole going straight through his chest near his heart. Knowing that he had no time to lose, Kakashi summoned a shadow clone to carry Naruto as he applied what little medical ninjutsu he knew to Sasuke and prayed to Kami that the medic nins were close. As both he and his clone dashed through the forest canopy, Kakashi kept checking Sasuke's vitals to make sure he didn't deteriorate. Unfortunately, Sasuke's pulse was slowing and without immediate help he would not survive. Kakashi's prayers were answered as a medic team had intercepted him. What are the conditions of Genin's Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto? Naruto suffered chakra exhaustion but is stable. Sasuke has received a severe injury to his chest and his vitals are falling. Kakashi replied as he and his clone handed over his students before they continued to the leaf. Kakashi worried about the future of his students. He hoped that he wasn't too late and that Sasuke could be saved. Kakashi was also concerned about Naruto, for he knew that when Naruto awakens, he will have to explain his actions to the council, and hoped that the blonde shinobi could justify himself. Word had spread throughout the leaf that the retrieval mission to return Uchiha Sasuke had been successful and without any causalities on the retrieval team, but that Sasuke was in a currently coma due to a near-fatal injury caused by Uzumaki Naruto. It was unknown whether Sasuke would awaken anytime soon. Naturally, the council was furious at the state of the last Uchiha and had already called forward all those involved in the mission to give their reports to the entire council. They listened to the report given by Shikamaru and commended him for completing the mission successfully with a team of genin, but were curious as to why he continued to proceed with the mission when all of his team had been split up fighting the Oto shinobi. Shikamaru told them that time was against them and with every moment wasted, Sasuke was more likely to escape to Ta no Kuni. Realizing that he was correct, they dismissed him and called in Kakashi. Kakashi gave his report on finding both of his students unconscious within the Valley of the End, as it was clear that they had been fighting with everything they had from the scars left in the valley. The council pressed Kakashi for answers regarding Naruto's state and if he had used the Kyuubi's chakra. Unable to lie, as any sensor sent to the valley could tell with ease that it had been, Kakashi confirmed that Naruto had, and that it was responsible for most of the injuries to Sasuke. However, the wound to Sasuke's chest was a mystery, as Naruto had no attacks that could make that kind of injury. The council, however, viewed that as a sign that the Kyuubi could have influenced Naruto in causing it and would have to wait for him to awaken. Tsunade hoped that Naruto could defend himself, as the civilian side of the council had been looking for a way to get rid of him for years and they wouldn't waste this opportunity that had been presented. Konaha Hospital. Upon waking to the sight of a familiar ceiling, Naruto felt hopeless for the second time in his life. He had failed. He failed to bring Sasuke back to the leaf, and he had failed to keep his promise to Sakura. It was probably for that reason why no one was in the room and why there wasn't any indication that someone had visited him. He lay back on the bed, wondering where Sasuke was now. Had he made it to Oto? Had Orochimaru taken over his body, or was he actually receiving the training he sought? Naruto wondered what would have been worse when the door opened and Shizune walked in. "Naruto, you're awake. How are you feeling?" She came towards him with the mystical palm jutsu scanning him for any illness. "I failed," was all that Naruto could mumble as a response. "What are you talking about? You won the fight. Sasuke is down the hall under guard," Shizune said, though with a hint of worry. If Naruto couldn't recall the fight, then he would be facing serious charges from the council. Naruto, oblivious to her worry, snapped his head up in hope. He didn't fail. He kept his promise of a lifetime. Sasuke was in Konoha. How is he? Is he awake? Does Sakura-chan know? He asked with mirth in his voice. He couldn't believe he beat Sasuke. He couldn't remember anything after that final clash between his Rasengan and Sasuke's Chidori. Yes, Sakura knows Sasuke's back. She and Ino are in his room right now. Shizune answered the last question first before saying, but Sasuke is currently in a coma. He suffered severe blood loss and a serious injury to his chest. She knew that her answer would hurt him, but she had to tell him. Better to hear it from her mouth than from someone less sympathetic to him. Shizune decided to inform him about the reaction to mission as well before the Anbu called for him. Naruto, the council has been calling forth everyone involved in the mission and I will have to tell them and Tsunade you're awake. Don't leave until she talks to you. With that said and the medical scan showing that he was fit enough to be discharged after some rest, Shizune left him to inform Tsunade. Naruto just sat in silent horror. He could not comprehend what Shizune had told him. He had nearly killed Sasuke. How? He remembered scratching his headband and then he blacked out. Fear gripped him as he wondered if the fox had taken control of him for just a moment. He could think of no other explanation. Lost in fearful thoughts, he didn't notice the Anbu beside his bed until she spoke. Uzumaki-san, the council has summoned you for a meeting. I am to escort you there immediately. Naruto leapt in shock to her sudden presence but quickly replied, I am not allowed to leave here until Tsunade Ba-chan has seen me. You'll be able to see her at the meeting. I must bring you there now, urged Anbu, unable to hide the stress in her voice. Naruto reluctantly agreed and they were Shuzan to the meeting chamber. Konaha Council Chamber, Hokage Tower. Naruto appeared in a slightly darkened room, with a large semicircular table directly in front of him with space for 15 people, 12 of them currently sitting. To the left side Naruto saw the 6 current clan heads with empty spaces for the Uchiha and Sarutobi clans as both heads, were unavailable for the meeting as one was currently on a mission and the other was lying in a hospital bed. The Senju clan currently did not have a seat since the current Hokage was of that clan, and could cause potential voting bias as the Hokage was the last known Senju. Sitting in 2 of the 3 center chairs were the 2 advisors to the Hokage. Tsunade herself was missing, causing Naruto to inwardly panic at the situation. Without Tsunade's support, the council would be far less supportive to him. The final 4 seats were assigned to the civilian members. Closest to him was Jiga Hotarubi, a heavy-set, balding middle-aged businessman who was the merchant guild of Konaha. What remained of his hair was starting to gray. Though he didn't blame Naruto personally about the Kyuubi, he could not stand the brat. The boy's numerous pranks had caused him unending headaches and problems as the owners of the shops he vandalized were continuously pressuring him to do something about the brat, but with both the previous and current Hokage supporting him along with his decline in pranks since he became a shinobi, there wasn't much he could do. To his right sat Iwashi Tatami, a young man in his early 20s who blamed Naruto for the death of his parents 12 years ago. Due to that he was raised by his uncle who taught at the school for anyone who did not choose being a shinobi as a career. Tatami followed in his uncle's footsteps and had recently taken over his uncle's seat on the Council for Civilian Education. He had never sat in a council meeting concerning Naruto before this one and had paid close attention to the meetings concerning the Sasuke retrieval mission, hoping to carry out some sort of vengeance against the Kyuubi brat. The next seat had Nobuo Tobita. He was a somewhat thin middle-aged man that wore thick shades and a black bandana over his head. He was the senior civilian medic at Konaha Hospital and helped treat the civilian populace so the medic nins could focus on treating shinobi. He had neither hate nor love for Naruto but in every meeting would let the arguments persuade his decision. The clan heads had often joked that Tobita was a civilian Aburame. The final seat was occupied by the representative for the retired shinobi, Shimura Danzo. Thank you Anbu-san, you are dismissed, said Mokato Homura, signaling for the Anbu to leave. Once she had left, Utatane Kaharu started the meeting. Genin Uzumaki Naruto, you have been summoned here before the council to report your performance regarding your role in the recent mission captained by Chunin Nara Shikamaru. Please begin and know that any omission or false testimony on your behalf, whether intentional or not, will be called for severe penalty. Do you understand? She asked emotionlessly. I have yet to give my report to the Hokage. Shouldn't I do that before this? He questioned, hoping to delay the situation until he could talk to either Tsunade Ba-chan or Ero Sennin. Damn right, yelled Tsunade as stormed right through the council room doors, her anger clearly evident on her face. Would someone tell why this meeting has been called before I have had a chance to debrief my shinobi, let alone discharge him from the hospital? She demanded while glaring at the council, focusing mainly on her advisors. Hokage-sama, the village has grown restless in regard to Uchiha-san's condition and how he became so injured. We wished to have these meetings finished as soon as possible so as to tell the villagers the truth, replied Danzo, knowing how to continue the meeting even against the Hokage's will. If the people hear that this meeting was postponed due to your favoring of the shinobi in question, there would be mass resentment from both shinobi and civilians alike. Tsunade knew that the war hawk was right, as she had to listen to numerous complaints from the villagers regarding when the Kyuubi brat and how he would be punished. If they heard about a delay, the unrest would deteriorate and she would be faced with a far greater problem than she currently had. Tsunade had wanted to prepare Naruto for the council since he had fatally injured the clan heir of a bloodline-carrying clan. His punishment was to be decided the council and not her. She only hoped that Naruto could explain his actions enough to at least get the clan heads to side with him, as she knew that the civilian side and her advisors would lean for a far harder punishment than necessary. Very well, she sighed, taking her seat. Naruto, please give your mission report. Naruto had then gone through his report, which had matched the accounts of the other shinobi involved up until he reached the point where Sasuke had stabbed his Chidori through his chest. The reports from both Hitate Kakashi and the field medics show no indication of such an injury. How did it heal before their arrival? Questioned Tobita. Naruto knew his answer would condemn him and he couldn't think of any way to phrase it that could be put in positive light. Seeing as they were waiting for his response, he braced himself for the backlash. I was able to heal because of the Kyuubi. Naruto could tell in that instant that he said that. The atmosphere changed completely, as if this is what they had been waiting for. Again, how? It is well known from your performance in Chunin exams that the level of control that you have over the Kyuubi's chakra can heal the smaller wounds that you receive, but it was still clear that the larger wounds remained. Asked Shikaku. He could tell that the boy was uncomfortable, but they as the council needed to make sure that he was able to control the Kyuubi, and without Jiraiya to check the seal, it would have to be determined through his report. Naruto shifted his weight and replied, the Kyuubi forced through more of its power, saying how it would refuse to die in a weak vessel. He knew he had worded response wrong as Tsunade's face sank and the others hardened. Are you currently able to communicate with the Kyuubi? Asked Inochi, unable to keep the fear fully out of his voice. If the Kyuubi could openly talk to Naruto, there was every possibility that it could easily corrupt him through constant assault. No, shouted Naruto in panic, calming himself down. I have only ever talked to the Kyuubi twice, when Sasuke hit me with Chidori and when Jiraiya threw me off a cliff during training. Seeing that she could save Naruto with this, Tsunade decided to intervene. This is true, as Jiraiya reported this to the third Hokage during the training in summoning toads. Apparently when Naruto is faced with a life-threatening situation, the seal allows him to communicate with the Kyuubi in order to help draw enough chakra to help him fight or escape. The clan heads had calmed down upon hearing this, and so had the civilians somewhat. Naruto, please continue, commanded Tsunade, relaxing somewhat as with the situation that Sasuke had forced, Naruto was legally safe as long as they checked Sasuke's memories when he awoke. It was too dangerous to do so while in a coma, as without him conscious it was difficult to decipher between memories and dreams. Naruto had resumed where he had left off, with the council being concerned with Sasuke's transformation, but then Naruto paused. He knew that this next part there was no way of talking around. Then after the attacks clashed, I passed out. The next thing I remember was waking up in the hospital. Naruto admitted, waiting for the council's response. What do you mean? You don't recall? Remember that any omission will be severely punished, stated Homura, his gaze narrowing on the blonde shinobi. That's what I said. I don't remember. Our attacks clashed. I passed out and then I woke up today. I don't know how Sasuke got injured so badly, or how I got back. Naruto said in a dejected voice. He knew this would end badly. How do you know of Uchiha-san's condition if you passed out before the conclusion of your battle? Asked Danzo with interest. The other members were also wondering as to how he knew. Shizune-san told me when she came to check up on me. She also told me she was going to inform you that I was awake. Naruto replied in panic, knowing that thought he was lying. You can summon her to check. Though his answer let them know he wasn't lying in his report, it left a more troubling question. Was the Kyuubi's power still active when you lost consciousness? Was Danzo's final question. Naruto realized that this was it, and whatever happened next was beyond his control. Yes, Uzumaki-san, you have admitted that during the battle that you have conversed with the Kyuubi, and when you lost consciousness, you were still under the effects of its power. Is that correct? Asked Homura. His expression was emotionless but his tone was not. Yes, the council will now debate your fate. Please wait outside. And with that, the dejected blonde walked through the doors and waited for his fate. After 20 minutes of debating and shouting from Tsunade, Naruto was called back to the chamber. Genin Uzumaki Naruto, by 7-6 vote, this council has decided that you are to be banished and removed from Konaha ninja ranks. It is due to your record during the Suna-Oto invasion that execution is denied, but from the reports of this mission, you are too dangerous to be kept within the leaf and the Kyuubi could force and break any chakra restraints placed on you. Spoke a crushed Tsunade. She had argued and pleaded with the council but was unable to convince enough of them. You will have tracking and silencing seals placed on you, to determine if you return within 5 miles of Konoha's walls and to prevent you from speaking about Konoha to any shinobi you encounter respectfully. You have 3 days to leave but are free to leave at any time before the deadline. Naruto, I'm so sorry, she finished, unable to look him in the eye. I understand, Ba-chan, whispered Naruto and left to collect his things. Konaha Uzumaki apartment. 6 hours later. Naruto had already packed his merge belongings in several sealing scrolls and had the seals placed on him. As of right now, Naruto was debating between either leaving without saying goodbye or going to see his fellow genin one last time. Sasuke was still in a coma, with no sign of awakening anytime soon. Sakura was still in Sasuke's room with Ino, and Naruto wondered if she knew if he was awake, let alone banished. How's it going, Gaki? Naruto jumped off his bed in fright as Jiraiya announced his presence from his window. Ero Sennin, use the bloody door. Are you trying to scare me death? I have had enough to deal with today. Naruto berated Jiraiya, though he whispered the final part. Jiraiya must have heard him as instead of laughing, he placed a gentle hand on Naruto's shoulder. I know, Naruto. I heard from Tsunade Haim. Naruto looked up into his face and Jiraiya knew what was really bothering him. Don't worry about the seal. If the Kyuubi was breaking loose, it would not have receded back into the seal but have continued to try and break out. Naruto gasped, hope rising within him, so I'm not losing control. The fox is still being held? He asked, needing reassurance to ease his fear. Trust me, Gaki, there have been other Jinchuriki in the past that lost control. When they did, their Biju went on a full rampage until they were resealed. Since the Kyuubi is the strongest of the 9, it would not just go back into the seal if it took over. Jiraiya explained, though he could tell most of it went over Naruto's head, but he seemed to get the meaning of it as he calmed down. Wait, Jinchuriki, is that what I am? And what do you mean others? Has the Kyuubi been sealed inside someone before? The blonde started questioning the Sannin, not giving time to answer any of them. Slapping his hand over the blonde's mouth, Jiraiya continued explaining. Yes, we call those that have one of the 9 Biju sealed in them Jinchuriki. There can be up to 9 Jinchuriki at any one time, but as for the sealing of the Kyuubi, well, that was something that I was coming here to talk about. Jiraiya saw how quickly Naruto calmed down and focused at that part. How do I go about this? Well, I guess it all begins with Uzumaki Mito. Uzu no Kuni. 10 days later. He was tired. He had been traveling towards the abandoned village for the last 9 days and had not met anyone or anything along the way, although he could have looked at that in a much more positive light. He missed having anyone to talk to. He had sped through the forest in the direction he was told he could find the village, though he was also told there was likely to be little to nothing of value. Naruto did not care about what treasure, or lack thereof, that might be present, but it was his family's home. He wanted to see the place for himself. After that he said he might head to Wave but would let his godfather know through one of the toads. Finally he noticed that the forest was thinning out and the coastline was coming into view. Even from this distance he could easily see the whirlpools that gave the region its name and was amazed by their sheer size. All of them were larger in size than Tezuna's bridge and looked like they could easily swallow any of the bosses of the summoning contracts that he had seen. After marveling at the sheer power of the ocean, Naruto decided to move down the coastline, searching for the entrance to the village when he came upon a strange sight. There along the beach were 13 people, 12 of them giants that all looked identical. The 13th man looked old, wearing a pair of baggy, brown trousers, a striped white and blue t-shirt with a long, white coat over it with the sleeves rolled up. His hair, what little was left that didn't make up his mustache, was a dull gray. Naruto saw all of the giant men turn to him and could hear one saying in an unfittingly soft voice for such a tall man, "Familiar detected. No movement taken. Request orders." Vegapunk looked up from the coastline and saw the same kid in orange from 2 weeks ago. "Well, this just keeps get interesting," said Vegapunk before signaling the pacifista. "Enough. This arguing is getting us nowhere," yelled an exhausted Tsunade. After having to deal with the Third War Council in 2 weeks with each meeting focusing on only topic, she was greatly missing her sake. This council has wasted far too much time debating on whether to seek an alliance while the Northern Alliance has been advancing for the last 2 months. "We need to reach a consensus today right now," she growled. As the council fell into debate once again as to whether or not to support the seeking of an alliance. Tsunade sat back in her chair, tuning out most of the bickering. It wasn't a problem with wanting to form an alliance, but as to who they were going to form one with. Tsunade held back a groan as Renga Hado repeated his proposition to ally with Kawa no Kuni, Land of Rivers. As the rebuttal came back again, Tsunade couldn't help but think as to how Konaha and the shinobi world went down the drain in the past 7 years. Within Konaha itself, the civilian side of the council had grown, due to peacetime and since Konaha had been recovering well from the Suna-Odo invasion, with 4 new positions being created. Though that was the outward message to the shinobi world, the meaning behind it was to let the civilian populace know that Konaha was not moving towards a dictatorship and to ease tension between shinobi and the civilians. The tension had begun after the civilians attempted to throw a festival celebrating Naruto's banishment, but the Hokage had put a stop to it. She argued with the then 3 civilian council members stating that the village was still recovering and that to broadcast to world that their Jinchuriki was banished could potentially start a war between the nations in an attempt to find him, though the 3 of them knew that she only stopped the festival because of her connection to the Jinchuriki. With the forced cancellation, the civilian populace grew restless and were further antagonized by the shinobi who followed the Hokage. In an effort to stop a full-on riot from the civilians, Tsunade created 4 new seats for the civilian populace on the council. It was hoped that they would help work together and ease the stress with dealing in civilian matters. Tsunade, however, did not release just how much of a problem they could cause in meetings with them, dragging out every single issue that did not directly relate to shinobi or clan matters or those that did not affect the village as a whole. Unfortunately for Tsunade, those were only her concerns in dealing with the internal problems. The external problems were far greater, starting with Wave. When word had reached the liberated nation, Tizuna, the newly chosen daimyo of Wave, had annulled the trade agreement with Konaha as they could not believe how they could treat their hero. Tsunade and the civilians in particular had tried to reform the trade agreement, but Tizuna wouldn't budge, stating that since Wave now controlled Gado Company, Konaha needed the agreement far more than Wave, considering that the shipping company controlled all trade around the eastern and southern seas. Dejected, Konaha had to drop pursuing that trade agreement and worry about another. Princess Koyuki, the new daimyo of Yuki no Kuni, Land of Snow, had come to visit Konaha, and in a meeting with Tsunade, where she informed the 5th Hokage that all diplomatic trade and relations with Konaha were cut and the Yuki had entered a trade alliance with Wave the previous week. Tsunade had tried to make Koyuki reconsider, but the daimyo would not compromise. Tsunade, and later the council, when they had heard, had told her the danger both Snow and Wave would be in without the support of one of the 5 great nations, but at this she smiled, saying that she of course knew this and that both Snow and Wave were currently discussing agreements with a new power. When the council tried to figure out whom, Koyuki left back for Snow, and it wouldn't be for some time until they got their answer. As time progressed, the stability of the continent deteriorated, with both Iwa and Kumo increasing their forces and with the smaller nations closing their borders. The signs indicated that the world was heading for a 4th Shinobi World War. Jiraiya's spy network had confirmed that Orochimaru was meeting with both the Tushikage and Raikage, and that an alliance was being formed. With this, Konoha strengthened its alliances with both Kase no Kuni and Taki no Kuni. As such, the Iwa, Kumo and Odo formed what they called the Northern Alliance in order to destroy both Konoha and Suna. Facing a larger force in both terms of numbers and Jinchuriki, the only thing in Konoha's favor was that their forces had superior strategy and teamwork, as the Northern Alliance was only that in name. The Iwa and Kumo shinobi rarely if ever worked together and was more of a non-aggression pact as they fought a common foe. Odo forces were used more of a hit-and-run tactic as neither Iwa nor Kumo would allow Odo forces near their camps. And so a stalemate had been reached in the first year of the war, and though both sides would push and defend along the front lines, neither side could gain an advantage until 2 months ago when Iwa and Kumo launched a joint attack force and broke through the Tsunataki Konaha defense. As of the last 2 months, both major forces were gathering in their latest forward outpost. As the situation grew bleak, Konaha had decided to look for help in the war, as all projections and scenarios showed that the war would not end in their favor. And that brings us back to this meeting. For the last time, we do not need trade routes for finance, we need an ally that has the force able to help us now. Shouted an irritated Shikaku. He had spent the last 3 meetings listening to the asinine ideas put forward by the civilians while the shinobi side had danced around the only group that could help. The only place that has that is the Water Empire. Silence had fallen with that declaration. Everyone in the council chamber knew of the Water Empire that formed 6 years ago. It had formed when the rebel forces fighting the 4th Mizukage had won, when an unknown shinobi had joined him. He had in the course of 3 months, helped the rebels defeat the 4th Mizukage and his forces, where it was rumored that he single-handedly defeated 1,000 shinobi before facing and slaying the Mizukage. Though the rebel leader, Meitarumi, became the 5th Mizukage, this man helped form an alliance with both Wave and Snow. When the alliance became solidified, all 3 nations became known as the Water Empire. With the formation of this empire, the mysterious shinobi was chosen to be the first emperor with the support from daimyos Tazuna and Koyuki as well as the 5th Mizukage. The only information they had on the new emperor was a title given to him during the Civil War. He was known as the Hoko Jishin. Nara-san is right, the only ones who can help are the Water Empire, and don't doubt that they can't, spoke a familiar voice from the shadows. Jiraiya, where the hell have you been? You were supposed to be here since the meeting began, fumed and irritated Tsunade. Why the hell can the old pervert escape this torment known as a meeting while she had to listen to every little detail? Sorry Haim, but I was gathering information on the Water Empire, and from what I've heard they are powerful. Stated a for once serious Jiraiya. In the last 6 years, Kiri has recovered their strength from the Civil War, with a force of 10,000 shinobi. Though not as large as either Iwa's or Kumo's forces, they have also reformed the 7 swordsmen. However, they are no longer referred to as the 7 swordsmen of the mist but as the 7 elementals. Why have they changed their name? Asked Homura. In his entire life and since Kiri was founded, the group had always been known as swordsmen. I don't know, but from what my informants tell me, it is because their elemental ninjutsu is at a level never seen before. He also claims that the 7 elementals were all chosen by the Emperor himself, reported Jiraiya. What of the Emperor? What do you know about him? Asked Tsunade. The Hoko Jishin was a complete mystery to the entire continent, as no one knew where he came from or what he looked like. My network was able to learn one thing. The Emperor wears the symbol of Uzushiogakure. As such, he is known in the Empire as the Emperor of the 4 Waters, reported Jiraiya, knowing that it would cause controversy. What? How can he be from Uzu? Uzu was destroyed decades ago. How can he be from there? The civilian council started shouting. Quiet. Jiraiya, are you sure that the Emperor is from Uzu? Asked Tsunade. The last thing she needed was the council devolving into anarchy. Yes, my informant is positive. The group from Uzu who could be powerful enough to beat the 4th Mizukage would be a member from the Uzumaki clan, said Jiraiya. At this, the council started bickering amongst itself as to whether they should look for an alliance with the Water Empire. Tired of the continuous arguing from the council, Tsunade decided to end the meeting. Enough. I will send a diplomatic team to the Water Empire after conferring with both Suna and Taki in the hopes to arrange an alliance. This meeting is now over. And with that, the shinobi clan heads left, along with the bickering civilian council. Are you sure it was wise to dismiss the council like that? You know they won't stand for that, said Jiraiya. Though he was no fan of the council, especially after what they did to Naruto, the last thing he wanted was for them to give Tsunade even more grief with the way the war was going. It's all right. They'll blow some hot air for a while, but ultimately they all know that the Water Empire is the only option we have, replied Tsunade. Shizune. Yes, Hokage-sama. Get me Aburame Shino, Nara Shikamaru, Rock Lee and Yuhi Kurenai now. Yuki no Kuni, Vegapunk's lab. So they are moving forward, looking for an alliance? Asked Vegapunk. Confirmed. One standard team dispatched at 1500 hours. Current heading indicates destination as Wave. Reported an average-looking man, save for the fact that his eyes looked lifeless. Excellent work SX1. Report your findings to the Emperor. As you command. And with that, the average man moved into the shadow while another came through the doorway. Despite the usually cold climate in this region, the man wore nothing but an open blue shirt and black combat trousers. You seem to be happy. Any luck with the gate? Asked the unknown man. No luck yet, but with time I should be able to get it working. The reason I'm in a good mood is that the rest of the shinobi are about to find out what we can do, Hattori, replied a smirking Vegapunk. Well, I was wondering when it would happen. Does he know yet? Asked Hattori. I just sent one of the pacifistas, he should know in a few minutes. Well, I better tell the daimyo, see you at the meeting. And with that Hattori left. Vegapunk then looked over to a tree with a dozen fruits growing, though the odd thing about them was that no one fruit was the same as the others. Vegapunk laughed at the memory when he first showed the tree to him, and all that the Emperor said was, "What's so special about a multi-fruit tree?" Well, the world is about to see. Things are about to get very interesting for the first time since he arrived. Deep within a land where the rain never ceases, 9 figures gathered in darkness, discussing the events that were unfolding in the world. Well, this is the first time in 7 years since we all last gathered. Is this becoming a tradition? Asked one of the shadows jokingly. Even in the darkness you could see that he had a wide toothy grin on his face filled with sharp teeth. Enough Kisame, I called you here to discuss the next stage of the plan. With the Northern Alliance making a large-scale offensive, this war will soon be over and we can continue with collecting the Jinchuriki, said the shadow in the center of the group. The most unusual thing about him was the shine in his eyes, with them having a strange ring-like pattern in them. We should have killed the snake when he changed bodies back then before the war, yeah, would have made things so much simpler, yeah. Drawled one of the shadows. It was true, for they had just tracked down and located all of the Jinchuriki and were about to capture the Nanabi. However, Orochimaru had united both Iwa and Kumo into his alliance and war had broken out across the elemental nations. As such, the defenses of the hidden villages were greatly increased, preventing the Akatsuki teams from infiltrating and capturing the Jinchuriki. Though this was a major setback, it did however have a silver lining. With all but one of the major villages fighting in a war, and the minor ones playing defensively, Akatsuki were able to acquire numerous missions over the last 7 years, resulting in them remaining hidden from the major villages for even longer. Even the 3 Jinchuriki that they were able to capture should have alerted the rest of the world to their existence. However, the 2 that they had captured from Iwa had been blamed on Konaha and Suna, while the Jinchuriki of the Rokubi was a wandering nin. All they had to do now was wait for the war to end, and with most of the major villages' forces expended on a prolonged war, it would be easy to capture the 4 remaining Jinchuriki on the mainland after the hostilities were over, even if one of them was a cage. The only problem was with the locations of the Sanbi and the Kyubi. The Sanbi was last known to be within Kiri, after it had reformed from the death of the 4th Mizukage. However, any attempts to track or locate its chakra signature were being blocked somehow. The same was true for the Kyubi, and with its last known location being within the Water Empire, made things difficult as they had yet to infiltrate any of their lands. Even Zestu couldn't move through their lands, saying that there was something in the ground itself blocking him. The leader of Akatsuki decided that when the 4th Shinobi World War was over that they would capture the 4 remaining Jinchuriki on the mainland while leaving evidence that the Water Empire was responsible. This would lead to direct confrontation and hostility with the Water Empire, forcing them to move their forces out of their territories, and if they couldn't penetrate these defenses, then a full-on assault in the open would happen, as they would no longer have to hide the Akatsuki's strength at that point. Enough Deidara, focus on the here and now. I want you and Sasori ready to capture the Ichihibi. Hidan, Kazoku, be ready to capture the Nibi. Itachi and Kisame, be ready to capture the Nanabi. Once this war ends, capture the Jinchuriki and make sure to make it appear to be the work of the Water Empire. High Leader Sama, spoke all of the shadows as they faded away, leaving only 2 people remaining in the cave. Once the other shadows had left, a spiral in the air appeared, with a cloaked shadow emerging from the center. Any progress on locating the Sanbi or Kyubi? asked the leader to this new shadow. No, whatever is preventing Zestu also prevents my technique from functioning properly. I can only materialize at their borders, I cannot open a portal within their lands, grumbled the cloaked man, his tone evident of his annoyance of the situation. The only way that could happen is they had a Sharingan that rivaled my own or... Damn it, I can't believe I made such an oversight, he suddenly shouted. What are you talking about? Asked the only woman of the group. Judging from her tone and facial expression it could be taken that she was apathetic to the situation, however to those who know her, Conan was nervous, whatever could stop Madara, could easily rival both him and Nagato, and such a power could prevent their plans towards peace. The Emperor is said to be an Uzumaki from Whirlpool. If it is true then he should be fluent in all of the Uzumaki sealing techniques. That would explain as to how the Sanbi and Kyuubi disappeared. He is hiding them from being found. The only question is if the defensive seals around the Empire's land are keeping both me and Zestu out purposefully or coincidentally. Either way the last two Biju are in that empire. Stick to the plan with the 4 Jinchuriki here on the mainland and I will focus on the empire. And without waiting for a response, Madara left as he entered, to devise a way to enter the Water Empire. Come Conan, we shall prepare for the Hachibi. And with that the final 2 members left the cave to overlook the village hidden in never-ending rainfall. Mizu no Kuni Kiryogger Council Chamber of 4 Waters. Within the village hidden in the mist stood the Mizukage Tower. The tower could be seen throughout all of Kiri, a black, spiked oblong tower with segmented walls, and the summit stood 4 pillars, each showing a symbol of one of the 4 nations of the empire. The most unusual aspect of the tower was that an identical tower stood within each of the nations of the empire, the one in Uzu being the largest. Each of the towers, though looking identical on the outside, had little in common in terms of interior and defensive capabilities. The within Kiri, being surrounded by a village, had the least armaments in terms of defense, but more than made up for it in the materials it was constructed from. Dr. Vegapunk was the architect of the towers and each one was unique to the other 3. However, within each tower was a circular room with a round meeting table designed to sit 4 members with a raised outer platform for guards. Behind each seat was a large banner depicting the symbols for snow, mist, wave and whirlpool in the cardinal direction in which you could find them. As the last of the 4 figures took his seat, the Emperor announced the beginning of the meeting and the reason as to why they were all called to Kiri. The 4th Shinobi World War is approaching a crucial point. Iwa and Kumo have made a forward base within Aim no Kuni, and from what the pacifistas can determine, they will be ready to launch an all-out attack on Konaha within 2 months if the supply lines continue at their current rate. How do we know that they will attack Konaha and not Taki or Suna? Asked Inari, captain and head of the Wave Defense Corps. The Defense Corps were trained to utilize chakra for low-level techniques but focused on Kenjutsu and a particular taijutsu style, while all members wore the enhanced chakra armor of snow, which had been modified by Dr. Vegapunk. They also had the 2nd largest force of standard pacifistas within the empire. Only Yuki no Kuni had more in both standard and shinobi class. Reports show that the base was constructed near the Aim High border. The borders and crossings into both Suna and Taki are too far away from the base's location and would be far more vulnerable to attacks of attrition if any large force was to be deployed from that base towards either Taki or Suna, replied the Emperor. So what have Konoha done in retaliation to this? They have been losing this war for the last 2 months and they desperately need a win, asked the current Mizukage Meiterumi. They have dispatched a team from Konoha yesterday. They should arriving just at Wave just in time for Inari's return, replied the Emperor. By which time I will have personally kicked them out of Wave. They know that the trade embargo forbids them from entering our lands, Inari replied angrily. He had yet to forgive Konoha for what they had done to his Nisan. No Inari, you won't, you will have them escorted to Wave Tower where I will meet with them, the Emperor spoke with authority. The entire chamber fell deathly quiet with that announcement. Shock was evident on all of their faces save that of the Emperor and the representative of Yuki, Dr. Vegapunk, who had a knowing smile on his face. And why would you wish to meet with them? You aren't seriously considering helping them, are you? Asked a bewildered Mei. Surely the Emperor wouldn't commit their forces to a war that did not involve them and had no profit or gain for them simply because Konoha had come to ask. She remembered heading to the other villages seeking aid during the rebellion and receiving none. Back then, even though Mei lead the smaller side, she and her forces were doing much better when she went for aid, as they were winning but needed supplies. Not even the third Hokage saw fit to supply them, and she had to return empty-handed and continue to fight. If it was not for the Emperor showing up when he did, who knew how long the civil war could have lasted, or if she would have even won. Mei would have been content with Inari telling the Konaha team to go themselves. My dear Mei-chan, I would not simply answer Konaha's call like a loyal attack dog. I have a cunning plan, answered the Emperor. Nami no Kuni, the Great Naruto Bridge. Kurenai and her team arrived at Wave looking at the name of the bridge, bringing back memories of a certain orange-clad ninja. Kurenai forced out past memories and focused on the here and now. She had to gain audience with the Emperor no matter the cost and ask for assistance in the war. Kurenai knew that the chances of success were slim. Even getting to meet the Emperor would be an achievement, but she had to do this for Konaha. Standard formation. Civilian pace. Do not show any hostile movements. We cannot afford any mistakes at this point, ordered Kurenai to her three subordinates. Hi Taicho, came the reply from all three. Just as they had started walking across the bridge, a thick mist had enveloped them, preventing them from seeing any more than 3 feet around them. As soon as the mist had settled around them, they could feel that their chakra was being suppressed. Kurenai and her team knew that it was due to defensive seals placed on the bridge, as they had been informed by Jiraiya that it would happen, and any attempt to counteract it would cause the more hazardous defenses activating. They hoped that by allowing their chakra to be suppressed, that it would show that they did not seek any hostile intentions and merely wished to talk. What they did not expect, however, was a 15-foot-tall muscular man stepping out of the mist. He was easily the strangest man they had ever met, and not only due to his size. His arms and chest were abnormally large, with disproportionately small legs for someone that tall. He had long curly black hair that reached down to his shoulders, and had the largest jaw Kurenai had ever seen. But the feature that stood out for Kurenai the most, and it wasn't the large black jacket with what appeared to be a white cross with a circle around where the two lines should meet. No, it was his eyes. They were rectangle shaped with no visible pupil, as if the entire eye was made of white glass, but Kurenai could feel him looking directly at her and her alone, as if he was staring at her soul through those lifeless eyes. Genjutsu Mistress. Yuhi Kurenai. Village Konohagakure. Rank Jonin. Ninja registration number 010881. Why have you entered the Water Empire? Asked the giant man. Kurenai was shocked at the man's voice. It was lifeless and metallic, but also had an oddly calming tone to it. The information he recited was, while general and easy enough to locate, unsettling that he could identify her at glance and could recite her registration number from memory. If he could remember that, he most certainly knew her entire bingo book entry. Going with that knowledge and with how they had planned to show no hostility or aggression unless attack first, Kurenai decided to answer truthfully. We came seeking an audience with the Emperor to discuss the terms of an alliance. She doubted that he would comply, but she had to try. The Emperor is at Wave Tower awaiting your arrival. Follow me. That response shocked Kurenai. She could not believe that it was that simple, but his answer told her more than she wanted. The Empire knew that her team were coming, and as to the reason, the Emperor was there simply to let them know he knew of their mission, which meant he knew how the war was progressing. Kurenai knew that getting the audience just became mute. The Emperor was agreeing to the meeting for more than simply saying yes or no to an alliance. Looking at her team, she could tell that both Shino and Shikamaru had already made the same conclusion, while Lee looked ecstatic, probably thinking that the Emperor was a youthful person and was wishing help fan Konoha's flames of youth. Kurenai didn't like how the mist remained even as they moved into Wave proper. It was there to prevent them from seeing anything other than their gigantic guide. All too soon they arrived at a large set of doors which opened on their own accord. Kurenai and her team were led through a series of corridors until they entered a circular chamber with 4 banners, each with a symbol depicting one of the 4 nations of the Water Empire. But what shocked Kurenai was that there was a man sitting under the banner representing Uzu. It was a man she thought she would never see again. Jonin Yuhi Kurenai and team as requested, my Emperor. Naruto, you're the Emperor? Kurenai asked in disbelief. Here sitting in front of her was the banished Jinchuriki, who had somehow become a legend in 7 years. It was incomprehensible to her. Though Kurenai knew Naruto had progressed in skill when he served Konaha, to reach a level to defeat cage-level opponents 1 year after his banishment should have been impossible. How could he have gained such strength? What could have changed? The Kyuubi. It was the only reason. The fox must have made a pact or deal to give him strength. There was no other way, and if Naruto had indeed sided with the Kyuubi, then this mission was doomed to failure, and that was without considering the fact that they had banished him. You sound so surprised to see me, Kurenai-sensei. Surely rumors of me being both an Uzumaki and showing up after my banishment must have at least made you and Konaha think that I was the emperor. It's not like there are many of my clansmen left in the world, replied Naruto with a fox-like grin on his face. Kurenai took in his appearance at that. Naruto had grown over the years and had now reached a height that Kurenai would guess at 5 feet 11. The baby fat that had once been prominent on his face had been burned off, leaving an angular, handsome face still adorned with the 6 whisker marks he had since childbirth. His golden hair had grown out and now reached his shoulders, with 2 long bangs framing his face. His hair was being kept out of his eyes with a head protector engraved with the Uzumaki swirl. Currently Naruto was wearing a long white trench coat fully open, exposing his bare chest, with the most distinguishing feature was the long diagonal scar running the length of his chest from his left shoulder down to his right flank. Along with the trench coat he was wearing bright orange combat trousers tied off with a blue slash. Well, you did come a long way just to talk to me, so how about we start? We have much to discuss, Naruto said calmly, with his ever-present grin shining strong as always. Konaha, Route Operations Center. Danzo was currently looking over the mission reports from the latest route deployments. This war had allowed Danzo to operate route without consequence from either the council or the Hokage following the loss of their Jinchuriki. Danzo still remembered how that meeting 7 years ago ended in disaster. With the success of the retrieval mission, but with not 1 but 2 clan heirs severely injured, Danzo had intended to secure the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. He had planned to use the incident to get Naruto's shinobi license revoked, forcing him to remain in the village, and then offer Naruto a way to remain a shinobi by serving route. He would personally train Naruto and gain his loyalty just as Hiruzen had done. Danzo knew from reports on other Jinchuriki that mental conditioning would be disastrous, as he could bend the will of the host, only for the beast to take control. Danzo had resolved never to place Uzumaki under that training if there were other options, as he could never hope to subdue the Kyuubi indefinitely with his Sharingan or his Mokuden techniques. He was no Shodai Hokage or Uchiha Madara. But then everything went south. The civilian representatives wanted Uzumaki executed while the clan heads were divided. Only 2 voted to let the Jinchuriki walk away free, while the others pushed for harsh punishment. Kaharu and Homura knew that keeping Uzumaki alive and in Konoha was worth losing civilian support and pushed for his shinobi resignation. However, Tsunade must have figured what they wanted and settled on banishment. Not to appease the council, not to save Uzumaki's life, but to stop Danzo from acquiring him. The chakra detection seals and 5-mile restraining barrier were to stop him from acquiring Uzumaki through kidnapping. In the end, his plan to acquire the Jinchuriki had resulted in Konoha losing their weapon, and only through route had the news of his banishment not spread. Danzo was left with no means to retrieve Naruto, but had him monitored by a route surveillance team. For only 10 days. Something happened near the coast of Uzu no Kuni and his team disappeared. Danzo completely lost track of the Jinchuriki and had no means of relocating him. Danzo had no idea as to the location of Uzumaki, but thought that he might be within the Water Empire. Though the loss of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki was disastrous, none of the other nation, great or lesser, seemed to realize that Konoha was merely bluffing in retaining the Kyuubi. Danzo was not satisfied with this, however, as it was merely a matter of time until someone challenged that bluff. In response, he personally took over care and training of the Uchiha. He was allowed to take over his training only after the Uchiha served a minimum prison sentence of 5 years with review for release after 30 months. Normally the punishment would have been execution, and Danzo would have pushed for it, but since the Uchiha failed to leave Hai no Kuni and had the backing of the civilian population, his sentence was reduced. Danzo intended to train the Uchiha into ground until he could rival his brother. The only reason no one disputed his claim to train the Uchiha was due to him being the only sealing expert bar Jiraiya that could suppress and monitor the cursed seal on the Uchiha's neck. Danzo's plan was to have an agent who could counteract the Biju and Jinchuriki and would ensure the Uchiha would have progeny so that Konoha maintained the Sharingan. However, the Fourth Shinobi War began. Pushed by Orochimaru and the disappearance of the Iwa Jinchuriki being blamed on Konoha, particularly himself despite his innocence, caused changes in Konoha that were to his favor. First, the Uchiha was released into his care after only 6 months of imprisonment. Sasuke seemed to have been humbled and followed every command given, but Danzo was not fooled. Sasuke was biding his time, but Danzo ensured to always have the Uchiha followed and monitored. The first sign of treachery, he would activate his fail-safe. Sasuke was put on the front lines and gained fame with the use of his Sharingan, earning the moniker of Sasuke the Blazing Sharingan. Though to prevent Orochimaru attempting another recruiting of the Uchiha, Danzo ensured that Sasuke was deployed along with 2 squadrons of root shinobi. He was not willing to risk his only countermeasure to the other Jinchuriki. The second difference was Root becoming an official organization again, hence allowing his forces to move out of the shadows. Danzo did honestly enjoy having his official training headquarters restored. He had enough of hiding his forces from the village he had trained them to protect by any means. In the face of the Northern Alliance, Konoha needed any edge they could get, and Danzo's private force greatly helped. His main focus in the war was to prevent the smaller nations joining the Northern Alliance. His root were disguised as both Iwa and Kumo shinobi and antagonized the smaller nations, while Konoha and Suna shinobi helped with aid, not knowing that they were engaging root. The operation was progressing in preventing any nation from joining the Northern Alliance, but not enough for them to join Konoha. Root were also assassinating any leader who was contemplating joining the Northern Alliance, leaving evidence of Odo, Kumo or Iwa being responsible. However, the war turned sour for Konoha when Iwa and Kumo launched a joint attack in Aim no Kuni and have been pushing forward ever since. Perhaps they realized that they had nothing to fear of an appearance of the Kyuubi, especially when the Hachibi Jinchuriki came onto the front lines. Danzo was not going to risk the Uchiha in a fight with the perfect Jinchuriki until he had produced an heir. Now Konoha were seeking help from that water empire, a place that his root had never been able to infiltrate. The sealing arrays encompassing the entire empire rivaled those of the former Uzushiogakure, and it took the combined forces of 2 major shinobi villages to break through. The Water Empire had no such concern, as all forces on the mainland were either engaged in war or waiting for the dust to settle. Danzo was hoping that a temporary alliance could be achieved, but did not hold out much hope. Shifting through his reports, he came across something that he knew would bring even greater misfortune to Konoha's survival chances. His agents reported 2 individuals entering Kase no Kuni wearing the cloaks of the Akatsuki. Danzo had the reports from Jiraiya about them and their goal at acquiring the Biju, but had he and the rest of the continent were focusing on the war, preventing any real action to be taken against Akatsuki. He sighed and started making plans on how to deal with this annoyance. Unknown location. So they are gathering their forces. Yes, all of them are gathering. They have never assembled like this before. Who are they aiding? We do not know, only that all who have that power will be out of the empire. So it will be unguarded. No, but it will be vulnerable for the first time. Good. I witnessed that power 6 years ago. I must have it. Are you sure of its location? Yes, its power calls to us ever since it came to this world. This farce of a war has gone on long enough. It is time to change the world. Nami no Kuni, Nami Tower. Naruto had finished talking with the Konoha team and they had left to report back to the Konoha Council. He would have loved to have seen their faces when the team was debriefed, but would settle for SX1's report when the meeting was finished. He briefly wondered what his life would have been if he wasn't banished. Would he have achieved his dream of becoming Hokage? Would he have gained respect from Konoha? Would he have even achieved what he truly desired since he was a child? You dwell too much on potential futures. If you never left, you would never have met that toy maker or gained that most marvelous of powers, Gaki. Spoke a voice deep within the recesses of his mind. You have a point, and I did gain what always wanted, but I wanted that light fruit. I would have been a literal yellow flash. Have you forgotten that you were reaching for the one that split up your body because it was orange colored? Only a fool of a clown would eat that one. The voice once again responding to its host. It was I who told you which one to pick, remember? I admit that I always enjoy watching its power in action. Chided the voice, though it was lined with amusement, recalling the effects of the fruit its host had consumed. The destruction caused by it was immense. Whatever, Kurama, replied Naruto. Kurama would always bring up that near life-altering mistake whenever he could, and he wasn't in the mood to listen to the goading fox when he had forces to prepare. SX-5 send word to the others that it is time for mobilization. Inform the 7 elementals to meet me in Uzu Tower, commanded Naruto to the figure that was following him in the shadows as he moved through the tower towards the seal array. He had a friend to meet and a promise to keep. By your command, Emperor, stated the emotionless response of SX-5. Hi no Kuni, Konaha Council Chamber 1 day later. Tsunade had called for a meeting to inform the Council of Jiraiya's information regarding the Northern Alliance's movement. All clan heads and civilian representatives were present along with the representatives of Taki and Suna. What Jiraiya had reported greatly unsettled her. The Northern Alliance has made its move. An army consisting of 13,000 Iwa shinobi, 12,000 Kumo shinobi and 3,000 Odo shinobi have marched out of their base in Aim no Kuni. They will cross into Hai no Kuni within 3 days. The Raikage along with the Hachibi Jinchuriki are leading the Kumo division while the Tsuchikage and his son Kitsuchi are leading the Iwa forces. Orochimaru is personally leading the Odo forces and guiding the path of the army towards Konaha. Spoke a somber Tsunade. She knew that this would be the deciding battle of the war and Konaha was not in a favorable position. What of our forces? What do we have to commit? Asked Nobuo Tobita. Our current forces number at a total of 18,000, but the village must maintain a force to defend the civilian populace. We can commit 2/3 of our forces to combat the Northern Alliance, replied Kaharu. What of Suna and Taki? What can they provide? Asked Inochi. Tamari, who was the liaison between Konaha and Suna, gave her response. At most Suna can only spare 6,000 shinobi, but Gaara will be leading the force. Taki can spare 3,000 shinobi at most, but our Jinchuriki will also be among our forces, stated the Taki representative, a Jonin by the name Tetsuru. Troublesome, outnumbered by 7,000, and both opposing Jinchuriki contain more powerful Biju than her forces. What path is the Northern Alliance taking? Asked the Jonin commander Shikaku. At this Jiraiya made his presence known. They are moving south towards the Kyubi no Ryaiki. The Kyubi no Ryaiki was a unique and famous area within Hai no Kuni. Southwest of Konaha was a barren wasteland with 9 towering mountains being the only landmark for miles in any direction. It was not the mountains that made the place famous, it was what once lived there. It was the former domain of the Kyubi for centuries, where shinobi tried repeatedly to subdue and capture the beast until Uchiha Madara succeeded. Even though it has been close to 100 years since the Kyubi last appeared there, few have ventured there. Why did they take that path? Why not simply head straight for us? Asked one of the civilian members. Because even though they have us outnumbered, they are in our territory, and the direct path between Aim and Konaha has nothing but forest covering the land. It is near impossible to move such a force through such terrain and not be attacked through guerrilla warfare. By moving through the Kyubi no Ryaiki, they remove our greatest advantage until they are less than a day's travel away from us, replied Tsunade. If we are to have any chance of repelling this army, we will have to engage them there. How long will it take them to reach that pass? Asked Danzo. With them having to move supplies and maintain order between the Iwa and Odo forces, less than 9 days, replied Jiraiya. Tsunade continued. Our forces combined with Suna's and Taki's can be mobilized and ready to defend within 8, but we still need to prepare a battle plan in order to defeat the Northern Alliance. Any word from Yuhi Kurenai on contacting the Water Empire? Questioned Iwashi Tatami. Her team should be returning later with news. I will inform the council of their status and if the Water Empire will be providing aid, responded the Hokage. This meeting is over. Shikaku, gather the commanders and meet here in 1 hour to begin formulating battle tactics. Hi Hokage-sama, replied all the representatives and departed. Tsunade hoped Kurenai would bring good news from the Empire. Uzushiogakure, Uzu Tower. The Fourth Shinobi War has reached its climax, and this battle will determine the future of the elemental nations. Almost every powerful shinobi will be there along with 4 Jinchuriki, Naruto informed his guest and friend. He met this man less than 4 years ago, and their initial encounter was eventful to say the least. Naruto honestly enjoyed the man's company and open challenged him to fights regularly. However, this man tended to become bored easily and required something to occupy his time. I told you the state of the world and to expect such a battle, and here it is. I am hoping that you would be willing to join me when we move out to fight. The pacifistas have already set the seal array at the Kyubi no Ryaiki. My forces are ready to mobilize. It will be quite some time before another battle like this happens again, Naruto continued talking. Do not assume to predict the future. Men older and wiser than you have failed countless times to predict the consequences of their actions. You and your forces entering this war will easily cause an unpredictable outcome in the world once they see the power of the Akuma no Mi, replied the man. Though I am curious to see if there is a capable swordsman in the shinobi forces, I will join you in the fight if only to see the strength of great nations. Naruto smiled at his friend's response and couldn't wait to see the reaction of the shinobi forces to this man's power. The man with the eyes of a hawk. Well, you did come a long way just to talk to me, so how about we start? We have much to discuss, Naruto said calmly with his ever-present grin shining strong as always. What is it that you want with the Water Empire? We have come here seeking aid and hopefully form the beginning of a diplomatic alliance with the Water Empire, spoke Kurenai, remembering why they had come here. Well then, my answer is no. As the Emperor of the Water Empire, I decline forming an alliance with Konaha in supporting aid to your forces in the war you are currently fighting, replied Naruto. But why deny aid to us? Why such an unyouthful response? Lee asked, clearly shocked by Naruto's answer. Both Shikamaru and Shino remained quiet, but it was obvious they were saddened by Naruto's response. It did not take a genius to figure that this mission would end in failure. The last time I served Konaha and completed the mission assigned to me successfully, I was rewarded with banishment. I could not even approach Konaha if I wanted to due to the seals being placed on me. Not only that, but to commit to a war against an alliance that has never sought open warfare with us would only weaken my empire, with no gain for us but all for Konaha's benefit, spoke Naruto. The banishment can easily be removed within an hour, Naruto. Both Jiraiya and Tsunade will make sure the alliance will be fair, argued Kurenai, trying to salvage some form of treaty. Sorry Kurenai, but as much as would love to see Ba-chan and Ero Sennin again, your council would ensure that my forces and resources would suffer. Hell, I would be forced to front all war expenses, and you know this to be true, replied Naruto. Kurenai knew how the council would react to Naruto being the emperor. She knew Naruto's prediction was being highly optimistic. What about the Mizukage and the daimyos of Mizu, Nami and Yuki? You may be emperor, but you cannot just deny an alliance without consulting with them first, Shino asked, hoping to both prolong the meeting and try to salvage some form of an alliance. I already have before you came here, Shino, and they all agreed that denying any alliance with either side as long as hostilities continued. Considering that there is no way for diplomatic relations to be formed during this war, I believe that this meeting has come to an end, continued Naruto. However, before Kurenai could turn around, Naruto gave her a sealed scroll. Please ensure that Ba-chan receives this. Only she can open it. Kurenai took the scroll, noticing the complex sealing arrays around the scroll before bowing and telling her team to leave. End flashback ********. As Kurenai finished recounting the meeting with Naruto, she gave the Hokage the sealed scroll. Tsunade reached out and after having Jiraiya check it, opened it. No emotion passed over Tsunade's face as she read the scroll. Once she finished, she burnt it and turned to Kurenai. This report is over. You are dismissed. Jiraiya, gather the commanders, we have a war to fight. What did he say, Haim? Not now, Jiraiya, go and gather the commanders. Hai no Kuni, Northern Alliance forces. Finally it was happening. Konaha was doomed. He had waited so long for this moment, and now with the armies of Iwa and Kumo, he would finally bring about the destruction of Konaha. Orochimaru could not wait for the battle that would crush that accursed village and finally acquire the Sharingan. Oh, he had tried throughout the war, but Danzo's little army prevented him from getting Sasuke. Every single time he was denied, even forcing him to choose a new host not too long ago. And all this trouble began because of an orange-wearing annoyance. Orochimaru knew Naruto had been banished for some time but thought nothing of it until the Iwa Jinchuriki disappeared. He knew that his former associates were behind it but used it to form an alliance with Iwa, telling them how Konaha lost the Kyuubi. He made it seem as if Danzo became desperate to regain Konoha's lost strength, and by warning Kumo that the same could happen to their Jinchuriki, he was able to form the Northern Alliance as well as delay the Akatsuki. Planting the evidence to blame Danzo was straightforward, crushing Konaha not so much. No matter what he proposed, both A and Onoki would barely cooperate with each other, and if it wasn't for his strategy and aim, this war could have continued for another 7 years. And now after 7 years, here it was. The end of Konaha and finally acquiring the Sharingan. It did not matter if all his shinobi died, if the Northern Alliance fell apart at the end of the month. It didn't matter if the Alliance lost to Suna and Taki in the end. All that mattered was the destruction of Konaha and getting Sasuke. Watch where you're walking, Odo trash. If only this alliance could be held together long enough to destroy Konaha. Konohagakure, Nara clan compound. Shikamaru had just finished compiling a defensive strategy to combat the Northern Alliance and hoped it would be enough. The civilian populace had begun evacuating to the capital, but he had more troublesome concerns right now, and those were about a certain blonde emperor. The most troublesome concern being that the Konoha 11 were currently spread out on several fronts, thus preventing him from informing the rest about Naruto. He honestly couldn't tell if it was a good or bad thing that he would not be the one to inform them, but knew he would be hounded by all of them for details when they found out, since he was the highest ranked out of all of them. After imagining both Ino and Kiba yelling at him for not telling them and being thankful that Lee already knew, he decided that now wasn't the time to worry about Naruto but to focus on the upcoming battle. The advance commando squads would arrive at the Kyubi no Raiki tomorrow along with 10 tracker and hunter squads to secure the area and begin preparations. Afterwards the main force would arrive and be divided into 4 primary divisions. Hopefully the primary battle plan would work, but there was one problem he saw with not only it but the emergency plans. All of them left the 9 mountains of the Kyubi no Raiki almost if not completely unguarded, which would allow the Northern Alliance an escape or rally point which would hinder Konoha's efforts. He addressed it to the Hokage, but Tsunade informed him and the commanders that the mountains had been safeguarded by the Shodai Hokage to prevent anyone from using them as a base after he had gained control of the Kyubi at the Valley of the End. Though that eased most of the concerns at the meeting, it did not ease his, nor those of his father, as the alliance would only be there for a short time and would more than likely scatter once the safeguards activated. Just as he was thinking over the troublesome mountains, a messenger hawk circled above declaring a council meeting. Sighing to himself, Shikamaru muttered as to how Kami must be a woman, for only a woman could make his life so damn troublesome. Yuki no Kuni, Rainbow Mirror Generator. No matter how many times he came to this valley and stared at the 6 massive mirrors, Vegapunk was filled with the one emotion he never thought he would feel again. Hope. Here in this valley was the answer to the problem he was unable to solve for his home island all those years ago. How to bring spring to a land of eternal snow. He had spent years trying desperately to fix his design of the geothermal heater, but no matter what he did, he could never get that heater to produce enough heat. But here in this land he found the answer. By focusing the heat into mirrors and reflecting the heat back to one focal point, the generator could produce enough heat to melt the snow of Karakuri Island. Ever since first viewing of the generator here in Yuki no Kuni, Vegapunk would always come back here to relax when he needed moments of clarity, and with working on that damn gateway as well as ensuring that the pacifistas were ready for war, he needed all the moments of pace he could get. Yo doc, are you going to sit there all day? You do know that Uzumaki wants to talk to you at some stage today, called out Hattori. Oh, be quiet and let an old man rest. The brat cannon always has flashed in if it was important enough, and since he hasn't yet it means it can wait. Vegapunk grumpily replied. That may be true, but you do remember who he's entertaining right now at Uzu Tower, or has that great mind of yours finally started to give out on you? Retorted Hattori. Good point. I'll head there now. Remember to keep an eye on my lab. Quote. As Vegapunk got up to leave, a smirking Hattori dashed away quickly towards the doctor's lab, deaf to the yell of, "And don't touch anything," while a swirl in the air itself went unnoticed by all. Hai no Kuni, Kyubi no Raiki. Kiba had finally arrived at the site of where the deciding battle of the 4th Shinobi War would take place. He, along with tracker teams 5 and 7, had been pulled from the border of Ta no Kuni and had been ordered to determine the safety and status of the area, ensuring that the Northern Alliance had not sent any advanced scouts or traps before Konoha forces could arrive. After the tracker teams had given the all-clear, the 50 commando teams would begin placing seals and traps all throughout the Kyubi no Raiki in order to disorientate and isolate sections of the opposing forces, which would hopefully help against the Alliance's superior numbers. "You're late, Kiba-san." Turning to see who had called him, Kiba saw the head of all Hunter Nin units of Konoha as well as his second-in-command. Neji, Tenten. How's it going? And what do you mean I'm late? Well enough Kiba, and don't listen to Neji, he has had to put up with reporting to the leader of the commando units, replied Tenten, with Neji narrowing his eyes at the mention of the commando unit leader. Yeah, I can understand that. But more importantly, where do you want me and my teams to search? Neji, thankful of the change of topic, directed Kiba along with teams 5 and 7 were to search the southwestern area, where Konaha's forces would enter the Kyubi no Raiki. With Kiba and the trackers heading off to their assigned area, Neji knew he had to report that the final tracker teams had arrived and the commando units could begin defensive preparations. The hunter squads were only part of this operation to capture or kill any Alliance scouts that may have been in the area. Since none were found, Neji had his forces on senior duty just in case any Alliance forces came to the area. Making his way to the command tent at the base of the mountains, Neji walked in, nodding to a few of the commando team leaders as he passed and stopped behind the commando leader, who was currently looking over trap designs and place locations throughout the Kyubi no Raiki. Sir, Kiba-san along with tracker teams 5 and 7 have arrived and currently searching through grids 9 through 16. The commander turned round at this to face Neji. About time he got here. Make sure your squads keep an eye out for any unwanted visitors and keep me posted, replied the commander. Yes sir, I will report in every half hour if there is no move. Sir, we have situation, shouted one of the hunter nin as he shunshined into the command tent. Report now, and it better be important, demanded the commander. Sir, our sensor nin detected a large contingent approaching from the northwest. They will be here in less than 2 hours, reported the hunter nin. They must be an advance scout from the Northern Alliance. How many shinobi are we dealing with? Over 600, was the reply of the hunter nin. Outnumbered more than 2 to 1 and with a third of their forces primarily trained for offensive instead of defensive combat, Neji knew that their chances of holding the Kyubi no Raiki were slim. But if they failed, then Konaha would have no chance of stop the Northern Alliance. What are your orders, sirs? The commander was silent for a moment, studying the map of the area before he returned his gaze to the hunter nin. Call back all hunter squads to the command post except the squad closest to the approaching forces. Tell them I want updates on the enemy's movement every 10 minutes. Yes sir, said the hunter nin before he shunshined out of the tent. Neji, recall all tracker squads and divide them along with the hunter nin squads into 3 companies. It's time to test Jiraiya-san's seals. As you wish, Sasuke. The end. Now we will see you in the next video.